Hello once again, YouTube. It is me, Base Jalarin, and we are back again to film part 2 of my in-depth manga collection tour, which is the final hump of the overflow, which you wouldn't think takes very long, but apparently 3 shelves of overflow takes me 30 minutes to frickin' film. So, let's just get right on with it. Let's just move right on along, and I already covered I Am a Hero in my last video, but safe to say that I highly recommend it. Just be prepared for Dark Horse's bizarre release schedule of the series, because this takes forever and a day to come out. You just gotta have a lot of patience. It's a good series, but like I said, you gotta have a lot of patience. Next up we have I See in a Sunflower by Mitsukazu Mihara. This was my first Mitsukazu Mihara collection that I got. I learned about this artist from Lythis, who is another manga tuber that I highly suggest that you check out. And it mostly focuses on sci-fi elements with a goth lolly kind of twist. There's a lot of robots, a lot of in the future kind of stories, and it's really interesting, and I really do suggest you check it out, especially if you like that kind of goth lolly sort of aesthetic in your stuff, because that's pretty much what these are. Next up we have In This Corner of the World, a very iconic manga that I feel everybody who loves manga should have in their collection. It's a period piece about a woman living during World War II, and it's just really iconic and just a really important story. And it's kind of like a slice of life that takes place during that time. And it's by Seven Seas, and Seven Seas isn't really known for having a lot of high quality releases. They're known for a lot of other stuff, but they're not really known for having a lot of high quality books. But this especially is really not really super high quality, but it's definitely a lot better than their other releases. All of the full color stuff is in full color. It's a lot heavier than their other books because it is printed on higher quality paper, and it's really, really nice, and I really suggest you check it out. If you haven't already, get on that. Next up we have Infinity Force, which is a manga I actually haven't read yet. I kind of got it because I thought my husband would be more interested in it, considering he's more of a Sentai fan than I am. But it hasn't really actually... I don't know if he's read it, but I haven't read it yet. And Volume 2 is coming out this month, so I really should get on that. I really, really should. Next up we have Inuyashiki, Volumes 1 and 2. Now that the series is over and it's no longer in anybody's halls, I'm finally collecting it. Getting onto this ship just a little late. But I figured I'm not really interested in collecting Gantz, maybe the Omnibus collection that's coming out. But it's just, I'm not a fan of collecting series that go on for forever. I mean, I do have some in my collection that go on forever, but when you breach the 30 volume mark, it's all okay, come on. But I'm really interested in this author's work, and Inuyashiki is only an easy 10 volumes, so I figured I'd get on that at least, especially since it seems to be something that a lot of people enjoy. So I figured I'd look into that. Next up we have Kanazuki no Miko, Volumes 1 and 2, and that is complete. I sort of struggle to call this a Yuri. There are heavy Yuri elements in it, but it's more focused on sort of supernatural elements and mech battles and action than it is about the romance between the 2 female leads, which does wind up happening. But it's not the main focus. If you like Yuri and you want something a little different, then Kanazuki no Miko might be the manga for you, but like I said, it's not entirely focused on the romance. And like I mentioned before, there's a brutal rape scene in the middle, so that if you don't like brutal rape scenes, maybe pass on Kanazuki no Miko, because it is really blatant and just kind of mean-spirited. Next up we have Kemono Friends, Welcome to Chapari Park. I have a confession, and well, it's not really a confession. I don't care. It's that I'm a huge fucking furry, and monster girls are okay. Monster girls are fine, but I love animal girls. I love girls with cute animal ears and cute fluffy animal tails and wings, and just I could go on and on about how cute I find animal girls. Like they are my crack. Just put cat ears on a cute anime girl and we're just set, we're ready to go. But yeah, I love Kimono Friends. I've watched a little bit of the anime, I haven't watched the whole thing. And this is a nice companion if you liked Kimono Friends, the anime, but it doesn't follow the same story, I don't think. Next up we have Maiden Abyss, the volume that is iconic only because it has now a hit series on Anime Strike on the back, which doesn't exist anymore. I just find that hilarious, and everyone who's bought it has pointed that out, and I also find it hilarious. I haven't gotten into this, and I haven't watched the anime, but I know it goes dark, and I'm really excited to see how it goes dark. Next up we have Magic Knight Rayearth, Collections 1 and 2, which is complete. Just a classic magical girl series from Clamp. It's kind of like one of those Clamp staples. Like if you collect Clamp, you gotta have Magic Knight Rayearth. And yeah, not much I can say about this release, except that they're really, really big because they cram 3 volumes in these books. And I think it would have benefited if they were in Dark Horse's larger format instead of being fat and small, but what can you do? This is what we got. Next up we have Mail, Volume 1, which I found out through a multiple of ways. This is by the artist who helped on Kurosagi Corpse Delivery Service, and if you did not know, the main character of Mail actually makes a cameo in Kurosagi, which I thought was pretty cool. And I've also seen the live-action drama of Mail, which is very, very dated. Like, it is very old, and it shows. And it's not particularly a good show. It's more like something you watch for the funny, because it's so old and hilarious. But I really hope the manga holds up. I haven't gotten into it yet. I'm planning on buying the other 2, because there's only 3, and then I'm going to binge it, so until then, this is going to remain unread. Next up we have Manga Sutra, or Futari H, which is the actual title. It is classified as like an educational hentai, because it has pretty much just everything about this manga is just a hentai. But it also, like, aims to educate you about sex. Maybe not in, like, the most in-depth way, but it does have a lot of, like, tips and, like, helpful things that you wouldn't really think about, I guess. And a really funny thing is that these books originally came in boxes, too, as well as being wrapped. Probably because Tokyopop didn't want people doing, like, that thing where you just unwrap it at the bookstore and leaf through it for the titty. So they also further fortified these books and put them in boxes, which is really interesting and a really interesting idea, especially since this was essentially hentai, so it makes sense that they would put them in boxes. Next up we have My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness, which is a lot less Yuri than you think it is, and a lot more existential crisis. There's a lot of, like, deeply relatable things in this manga that I could relate to, and not just the fact that the character in the book likes women. There's just a lot of, like, light stuff she goes through life that she details in this manga that a lot of people could probably relate to, and just because it's got like a lesbian wrapping on it doesn't mean that you can't relate to it. And I definitely recommend My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness, especially since the sequel, My Solo Exchange Diary, is coming out, I think, in the summer. Next up we have Nameless Asterism, Volume 1, which is a brand new Yuri, and I really love it because the character designs are really defined. Like, in some Yuri, you just have a lot of really pretty girls, and sometimes they kind of look the same. But the character designs in this, I feel like the author put a lot of effort into making all of the girls look varied. With their hairstyles, like their eye shape, their face shape, how tall they are. They all kind of like at least on the front, it looks like each one of them was drawn by an individual person and not like just by one person. And I really like that. That's really cool. And also it's really thick. Like, it's not super huge, but compared to like other Yuri titles we've gotten from Seven Seas, it's actually a lot thicker. Next up we have Neko Gahara, Stray Cat Samurai. I am iconically not that much into samurai manga, but Neko Gahara kind of took my heart because I also love cats. So, I mean, if it's a genre that I don't like, you could just slap some kitties in it, and suddenly it'll be my favorite thing ever. And what I initially thought about this manga was that it replaced like historical people in history, or replaced the human element and just made everybody cats. But it's actually about like actual like it takes place in actual like that period of Japan, and just focuses on like pet cats or stray cats that existed during that time, and like puts them in like traditional like Japanese clothing and gives them swords. And it's kind of like the secret society of cats during that period of time. And it's really neat, and I really like the art style. It's very like rough, and like you just like the movement that you can see. Let me see if I can like find like a picture of like somebody slashing their sword, because it's really, really cool. I'm ruining like stuff like that. I really, really like that, where it's all like rough and inky. That really attracts me to Neko Gahara, especially with like, you know, the cat element also. Next up, we have Neo Parasite FNM. This one is mostly done by josei and shoujo artists. This one by shonen, but mostly for the most part seinen artists. You would assume that I would also have Parasite to go along with these, but no, I actually don't. These are kind of insurance for the fact that one day I might collect Parasite, but it's not high on my priority list. It's actually really below at the bottom. But I do plan on collecting it someday. I mostly got these because they had art from artists I like. This one has art by the artist who did Utsubura, and this one has a section done by the artist who did Mysterious Girlfriend X. And there's some interesting other like artists in here too, some that you might even recognize. Next up we have Neon Genesis Evangelion, the really high quality omnibuses containing volumes 1 to 14, which is complete. I was really worried at first that they weren't going to make an omnibus for volumes 13 and 14, considering it was only 2 volumes, and until then they'd put them in groups of 3. But I'm really glad that they wound up making an omnibus for the last 2 volumes to make everything match, because I originally had the tiny itty bitty little ones to make up for that fact, and it didn't match at all. So I'm really glad that we wound up getting the last omnibus, even though it took a little bit longer than the other 4. Next up we have Tony Takazaki's Neon Genesis Evangelion, which is just a humorous twist on Evangelion. And I personally like when people do like the humorous twist, like there's like humorous parody manga. I really like parody manga of serious series like Evangelion. It just, I don't know, I really like when you take something that's like really like serious and action packed and you make it freaking hilarious. I really like that. That's great. Next up we have Oh My Sweet Alien, which is a wholesome manga about families and just being together, just the togetherness of families, and accepting your loved ones regardless of who they are or where they might come from. But it also has a lot of alien titty, so I can't openly recommend it to everybody, But if you could look past the excessive nudity in Oh My Sweet Alien, it's actually a really good series, I promise. Next up we have Othello, volumes 1 through 7, which is complete. I love Othello because in so much shoujo manga you will get like the helpless like female protagonist who's always like put upon by like bullies or whatnot, and it's always just her being dramatic, like, woe is me, I'm so sad, and it's just played up for the drama. And Othello doesn't fuck around. Othello, the main character, has a split personality named Nana, and Nana takes revenge on everybody who's wronged the main character, and she does so successfully time and time again. And it's just really satisfying to see the tragic shoujo heroine trope kind of turned on its head by this series. Next up we have Pipochu, volumes 1 and 2, a series that I'm convinced I'm never going to be able to finish, considering volume 3 is very out of print and very rare and very expensive. But even so, it's a really neat series. It's kind of a critical look at the Western fandom, or at least the more extreme parts of the Western fandom who are into anime and manga, who kind of view Japan as like this fantasy land of anime and manga. And it's just a really like introspective look into that sort of lifestyle. And it's a really good story, and it's really a shame that I'm never going to be able to finish it. Next up we have Planetes, volumes 1 and 2, which is complete. I hear that this is going out of print, which would not surprise me, considering Dark Horse is kind of want to just kind of stop making manga after a certain point in time, and just they let it go out of print very, very easily. But I don't know if that's true or not. If so, I was lucky to have found these. I still haven't read them, though. Next up we have R.I.P. or Requiem in Phony Brain, which is a one-shot manga by Mitsukazu Mihara. It's not as good as I See It in a Sunflower, or I have another one by her called Beautiful People, which is another series of short stories, but it's not bad per se, it's just a little weaker. Maybe it's because I like her short stories more than her ongoing series, which this is not really ongoing, but it's a series of stories. It's one story instead of a series of stories. But it's still got that really nice goth lolly feel that I really, really like. And also the spine is tragically sun-bleached. R.I.P. R.I.P. and pepperonis. Next up we have Revolutionary Girl Utena, which is the complete series in this beautiful box set put out by Viz. And I'm so glad that they have done so, because the original Utena, the most recent Utena before this one, was really, really old and out of print, and it was part of like their really, really old shoujo line before Shoujo Beat existed. And I'm just glad that they made it accessible again, and also in this beautiful box set, in beautiful hardcover books. I would take them out, but it's just so much of a pain, because I guess it's a positive, they're really packed, like, it takes some effort to get them out of this box, which actually means that they're really protected in there. So yeah, it's a really nice box. Like, it's got like these like gold detailing on the side. It's really, really nice. I really like it. Next up we have Ruby, which is the single volume done by the person who did Dogs, Bullets, and Carnage, I think. And I am total Ruby trash, so I was waiting for the day that this was going to come out. And now I have to wait very impatiently for the anthology series that's coming out in May, I think. But I really, really like this. It's really, really neat. It's the first couple of chapters are pretty much just a manga adaptation of the original trailers that we got for the series that showcased Yang, Ruby, Blake, and Weiss. Oh my god, why am I forgetting Weiss? Weiss is my wife! No! But I love Weiss's chapter in this because it actually adds a lot of detail and a lot of stuff we weren't able to glean from her trailer, and it gives her a lot more backstory, and I really, really like it, especially since Weiss is my favorite. And I just love the attention that this manga gave to her and her backstory, which is pretty freaking good. Next up, we have Scumbag Loser, which is complete in one volume. I think this is like a 3-in-1, and it's really, really thick because Yen Press really likes to stuff things all into one book, which is fine, I guess. You just gotta be really careful when you read them because I can feel the spine starting to like crease, and it's all like, no. But Scumbag Loser, I thought it was just gonna be kind of like a coming of age sort of like comedy that kind of poked fun at like this really like unsocial fat kid. But it is not that at all. It has a dark like science fiction twist almost right away that just colors the manga in a way that I wasn't even aware it was going to happen. It's really, really bloody and kind of like a little scary, but not a lot scary. I'd look into it, mostly because it's an all-in-one, so it's not a lot to like invest in. And yeah, it's spooky. It's spooky stuff. Next up we have the Secret Sakura Shares, which is an all-in-one, again by Yen Press. And the reason I got this, because it's kind of a standard shoujo, it's nothing all that special. The reason I got it is, here's the cover, right? It is printed upside down. And I have a really, really sick, obsessive fascination with finding misprints. And whenever I get a misprint, it's all like I hang on to it for dear life, like it's a treasure or something. But yeah, the Secret Sakura Shares is just kind of a standard shoujo. It's nothing all that special, and it's really, really short. The reason I got it is because it's printed upside down, and it's not horrible, so if you like shoujo, I mean, there's more shoujo for you. Next up we have Sekirei, volumes 1 and 2. Well, it's Omnibus volumes 1 and 2. These are 2-in-1s. And I kind of jumped on this mostly because I'm bitter that I didn't jump on Prison School when Yen Press was first putting out Prison School, because now Prison School is like impossibly long. It would be like so much money to collect, and I'm collecting so many other series. It would be a big old pain to try and catch up with Prison School. So when they announced that they were going to produce Sekirei, which is another kind of like ecchi series and a 2-in-1, I jumped on it because I like my titty. And I want some titty too. So I got Sekirei. I need to get volume 3. It's on my to get list. So yeah, there's those. Next up we have Silver Spoon, volume 1, which is by the same author who wrote Full Metal Alchemist and did art for the Heroic Legend of Arslan. This is not like a super action-adventure, high-stakes series like those two. This is a down-to-earth, sort of slice-of-life, coming-of-age story about a kid who enrolls in an agricultural high school way out in the boonies because he wanted to get away from home, and this school had dorms, and everybody else is like from farm families, and we just get to learn about farm life and just learning about like the different things that you do when you're running like a farm through this kid, and it's just really, really neat, and I like it. Next up we have the very, very famous Solanin, which is Inio Asano title that I suggest that if you are interested in Inio Asano at all, that you get into this first. One, because it's a single volume, so it's not like several volumes like Oyasami. I said Oyasami. Good Night Poon Poon. I was introduced to it as Oyasami Poon Poon, so that's probably why. And it's not as confusing as Nijigahara Holograph, and it's not as sexually graphic as A Girl on the Shore, and it's just a really nice coming-of-age story, and it's really, like, accessible, and that's why I recommend it to anybody who's looking to get into Inio Asano. And then number 2 is obviously Goodnight Poon Poon, but Solanin is probably the most accessible of his works, so I always recommend it to anybody looking to get into this artist. And it is really good, and I remember very distinctly the first time I read it, which was in high school. It made me cry like a baby. No shame. Next up we have Sundome, volumes 1 through 8. This, I'm not saying that this doesn't have an interesting story, because it probably does, like, past all, like, the boobs, and, the perverted stuff, but the reason I got Sundome was back in the day when I was a kid, they were just putting this out, it was brand new, and I found, like, an unwrapped one at the bookstore, because somebody had unwrapped it, read it, and then put it back, as people tend to do. And I read it, and I was all like, I was interested in the story, but I was like, oh no, though, there are boobies, and I can't bring this home because my mom will find it and I'll get in trouble. So I never got the chance to hop on the Sundome train, but now I have it, and even though a lot of these are very, very, like, well read, like, you can see, I don't know if you can see the creases on these are really, really deep. They're very, very loved books, but I have the whole series now, and now I can finally get into what I missed as a kid, because oh no, boobies. Next up we have Sweet and Honey by Mari Okazaki. This is another one of the manga from the Passion Fruit imprint, just more coming-of-age stories about teenagers, done by an artist that I really, really like, because she adds a lot of, like, these really interesting, kind of out-of-place details into her panels. Like, sometimes you'll just find just, like these really intricate details that didn't really have to be there, but kind of add to, like, the atmosphere of her manga, and it's really, really nice. Next up we have Sweet Blue Flowers, volumes 1 and 2, which kind of gives me hope that one day we will maybe possibly see a Wandering Sun reprint, maybe possibly, fingers crossed, because this is by the same author, and this is a Yuri, a big fat 2-in-1 Yuri. Love that thick Yuri. Next up we have Sword of the Dark Ones, which is a manga that is based off of a novel that I never read, so it was really hard to parse, because a lot of, like, stuff they mention, a lot of characters they meet in the series are related to the novel that I never read, that I don't even think exists in English at all, so this is not a thing I'd ever recommend anybody read, unless you just like dumb action and don't really mind being lost all the time. Next up is Takane and Hana, which is a new release by Viz, and it's an age gap romance. There's a good 10-year gap between the two, but I really like how the main girl, Hana, is, like, no nonsense. She's very, very sarcastic. She's not like your usual very soft, tragic shoujo heroine. She's very take charge, and she doesn't take any of the dude's crap, which I really, really like. Next up we have Testarosso, which is complete at 4 volumes, and I just realized that number 4 should be over here, not right there. I know how to count, I promise. These spines are ugly and hideous because they don't match, because CMX was trying to figure out what the fuck they were trying to do while they were releasing this series, and it's okay. It's like, it's about, like, a religious group, and they're supposed to be the heroes, but they're always, like, doing, like, villainy things, and all the villains are doing, it's a very, gray morality manga, where no one is really strictly good, and no one is really strictly evil. There's a lot of really fun, dumb action in it, and if you like manga that, like, have, like, a religious theme, where the religious theme, it also has guns, I definitely suggest looking at Testarosso, even though the spines are hideous. And finally, on our overflow, we have Voices of a Distant Star, which is a manga adaptation by the movie by Makoto Shinkai. I have not seen the movie, and I really, really need to, because it was kind of a marvel, because dude made it all by himself, at least, and there was some help from, like, his girlfriend at the time, but aside from that, he made it all by himself. And the manga was pretty good, and it makes me really want to see the movie, just to get a little more context, because I'm pretty sure there's some stuff in the movie that wasn't in the manga. But yeah, I'm really glad that Vertical Comics rescued this from Tokyo Pop. I don't think the Tokyo Pop release was all that rare, and you could have bought it before, but I'm pretty sure this is a higher quality release, because Vertical is one to do very high quality releases. And yeah, we are all done with the overflow, and now I can move on to the shelves. So I will see you guys in the next video featuring the shelves. So yeah, bye.